everyone.
You can start.
Good?
Yeah.
All right, sweet. And just FYI, guys, if I drop out like last time, just someone pick up here. I know we all have like somewhat differing internet connections. All right, but cool. So I can't see everyone around, but thanks everyone for joining. Appreciate your time. We'll try to make this as full and kind of efficient as possible with everyone's time. I would say as a opening remark, first of all, I'm Brett. We'll go around and do bios in a second, but I think there's a chat function somewhere that everyone should see. So to the extent people have questions or want us to talk about specific things, that would be particularly helpful to message so that we can make sure this is going in the right direction. So let's go around quickly and just do kind of quick bios. I'll go first, and then I'm just going to go across my screen. I'm Brett Levine. I went to Penn, studied finance, undergrad, and interned at Magma in Israel, and the summer after that at Blackstone in the M&A group. I spent 2 summers there, in 2 years there in the M&A group, and now I am at a firm called Anchorage Capital. So I'm just going to go across to Ben. You're the first one, then to Liz. Do us a favor, kind of walk us through your background quickly.
Cool. So I'm Ben Glock, went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. I interned with Barclays in Tel Aviv and returned there in New York to summer in the Global Industrials Group, and I'm now full-time in the Industrials Group at Barclays.
Awesome. Liz, you're next.
Hey everyone, how are you? I was class of 2011. I interned at KCPS in Israel, and then after my junior summer, interned at Barclays in the healthcare group, and then joined Barclays full-time when I graduated in the M&A group. And now I work at a private equity firm called Catherton.
All right. Richie.
Hey everyone, my name is Richie, and I'm from Toronto, Ontario, in Canada. I was with Barclays in my summer of Excel, which was in 2014, and then joined Citigroup full-time in the M&A team in Toronto.
Awesome. Will?
Hey guys, I'm Will. I worked at EY. I was there the same summer for Excel as Richie in 2014. This past summer I was at Goldman in the tech, media, and telecom group, and I'm going to be going back there full-time. Oh, and I'm at Cornell. I'm a senior right now.
Awesome. Is Todd on? I don't know if Todd, you there?
Yeah, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm class of 2011. I worked at E&Y in Israel. Graduated from Penn. Did my banking internship and full-time banking at Morgan Stanley in the media communications group, and then and now I'm at a private equity firm called Silver Lake.
Awesome. All right. So I think Will, we'll start with you because you're maybe one of the more recent ones to the internship program. So can you just talk a little bit about kind of what feedback you got while you were an intern, kind of what people were looking for as they thought about giving you guys feedback and making full-time offers. So what would you say the most important pieces of advice are for people who are going to be in those shoes, in just a couple months?
Whether you see it as like an unfortunate thing or kind of a convenient thing, depending on which stance you take, you're under a microscope for the entire internship. So the biggest thing is to kind of like show that you're responding positively and like kind of receiving each piece of feedback that you get and kind of reacting to it in like a proper way, because you don't want to seem like any feedback you get from like whether it be your staffer or like analysts that you work under, associates you work under, you want to make it seem like every piece of advice is something that like you're taking to heart. And sometimes it's hard to do that, and you need to like kind of create opportunities to show that you've been working on something in particular, or like use questions in a way that, or pose questions in a way that shows that you're working on things. So if you have questions about modeling, or you have questions on some particular transaction, you don't understand things, you can use every opportunity to like chat with your superiors and even your like fellow interns to show that you're like working on certain skills and you're working to improve in that short time frame. And that being said, it's also like incredibly important to leverage the intern class. Like you guys are in it for hopefully the long haul together, and it's fortunate in banking to depending on kind of how the firm like structures everything, like hopefully it's not as cutthroat as something like sales and trading, so you guys can kind of work as a unit and collaborate and kind of like build on each other's knowledge or like bodies of knowledge. And so you kind of like figure out where your resources are and who your friends are and who you have to ask more formal questions to, and you kind of like you figure it out throughout the summer, I guess. Awesome.
All right, so maybe for some of the older members of the crowd here, Liz and Todd and me, I can chime in. Looking at it from our perspective, like what do you guys see as some of the main reasons or the top reasons why some of the interns that you've worked with them as like didn't end up getting full-time offers? I think it's always a helpful way for people to kind of think about summer and what not to do, because there's always an infinite list of things of what you should be doing. But maybe start with Liz or Todd, whoever wants to jump in.
I'm happy to start. For me, the biggest thing is your attitude and a willingness to work hard and the desire to learn. So what I mean by that is no one expects you to come in as an intern and have a complete knowledge of finance or how to build a model or anything like that. They expect you to be willing to put in the time and effort to learn and understand. At least that was my experience coming from a liberal arts background. So that's the biggest reason. Like, it sounds awful, but face time does matter in some regards. In that you want to make sure you're around if someone needs help, and that doesn't mean staying there till 3 a.m. to stay there till 3 a.m., but it means don't leave at 8 or 9 kind of thing. And if people are working late, you want to make sure you're around and able to help them. So having the attitude and the desire kind of to work hard and learn would be my number one thing is why people don't get offers.
Yeah, I'll follow up on that. I mean, I always tell people there's two things. So the first thing is attitude. So I totally agree with Liz there. It's all about having a good attitude, showing desire to work hard and learn, and taking other people's feedback and turning that into good positive work. And then the other thing I think is it's honestly kind of using common sense and just paying attention to detail. Unfortunately, you wouldn't really think about it, but the interns I've seen that haven't been so successful have been the ones who do kind of stupid things like go out for lunch when they're supposed to be hosting a call with a management team and then completely forgetting. It's just things like that where you would never think that people would forget about stuff like that, and that could just absolutely ruin your career at a bank. You're there for 10 weeks. Like there's things like that. You don't want to make mistakes with, and if you do, just make sure you don't do it again, and really try hard to learn from your mistakes and make them one-time mistakes.
Yeah, and usually don't want to be. I try not to be redundant, but I think it's worth it in this situation. I think by far the number one piece what was in Todd hit on is attitude. The nice thing about an internship is you're not really expected to know that much, even though you're all going to be really smart kids and coming from great schools and stuff. There's just a big learning curve, and nobody is expecting you to kind of hit the ground running 100% from day one. And where kids really lose out is not because they're not smart enough. You pretty much already made that cut when you got the job. It's because you kind of have a bad attitude about things. I think it's worth just re-emphasizing. So maybe the next point, if we're trying to do this in order, is think about, so you went through the summer, say you did a great job. Maybe you got an offer, maybe you didn't get an offer. Anyone have experience kind of doing full-time recruiting back in the fall or at the end of the summer in terms of like accelerated processes, different banks? Anyone have experience kind of talking about that? Now I can chime in.
I'm happy to speak to that. So I spent my third year summer, so my junior summer, that's the Canadian term, third year. I spent my third year summer with Barclays and had to come back and recruit full time. And I went through the accelerated process, so that'll likely be the case if you are given time to think about your offer after your internship, or if you want to make a change after not receiving an offer. So the accelerated process is sort of under the table. It's a little bit trickier to navigate. It's about reaching out to different banks on your own, sometimes getting inbound calls, but it's done before the school year begins, mostly in August, and even in July in some cases. So if you're going to go through that process, sort of decide quickly and decide early if you want to make that decision. And if not, you could always wait to go back to campus and still go through the normal channels. But I think when I was making my decision, the most important factor was finding a team that I meshed with well. And you can get a sense after interviewing with one bank for a few rounds, but taking the time, most banks will give you at least a couple months to make that decision to sign back, and it's definitely worth going through the process again, unless you're extremely happy. But just sort of getting a sense of who are the best people to work with, because that's, at the end of the day, most important.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I think something that people, at least in my experience, something that a lot of people don't realize is they maybe went through their summer and liked what they were doing a little bit, but were interested in exploring other things. And a lot of people, I think, didn't realize that many of these firms recruit at the very end of the summer, like while you're still almost an intern for some of them, because they don't want to have to recruit a lot back on campus in the fall. So just something to be mindful of as people go through summer internships. Hopefully you love it and it's your dream job and all works out, but it doesn't always happen that way. And just there's always a lot of opportunities to pounce on things before you even get back to campus. Okay, so maybe the next question is for the people who decide to go back and recruit full-time on campus, kind of after you did a summer internship, like how is it different from recruiting for the internship? What are the things that are important to emphasize? Networking? Is it just being really timely about things? Anyone want to chime in on that front? The people who recruited as a senior?
Did anyone else recruit besides me? Because I'll pass it off if someone hasn't spoken yet. No? Okay, I'll go again. I think it's a much less technical interview. So I still went through the interview process for summer and managed to have a few people wait on me before I decided to go on Excel. But I found the full-time interview process to be much less focused around testing your knowledge and testing your skill set. They sort of understand that if you've spent a summer with a bank, then you have that established toolkit ready to go. But it's much more about classic fit questions and sort of gauging whether they want to work with you, because they've either decided that they didn't want to take all their interns back and are looking to replace them, or are looking for someone who's a little bit more stronger on the technical side. So it's about having those coffee chats and reaching out to people and seeing if you are fit personally, and if that's more the focus. I wouldn't worry as much about showing up with the guide memorized and those sorts of things ready to go.
Awesome. All right, so we're gonna turn yours to maybe to Ben for a little bit. So talk a little bit about kind of the transition between your first year and your second year, what it's like, the major differences, just as people kind of try to scope out the opportunity ahead of them. It can be a big commitment for people as they think about internships and turning into full-time jobs, and all of a sudden they're planning for the next few years of their life. So like, what's it like? How's it been? How's the first year different from the second year?
So I'm still a first-year analyst, actually. I'll talk about the transition.
So you can answer the first part of the question.
Sure.
What's it like the first year?
So being a first year is a lot different than being a summer analyst. The level of responsibility is kind of the primary difference. You are responsible for your deal. You're responsible for getting deliverables out the door. You're responsible for making sure you understand all of the numbers in your model, all of the pages in a book. Banking is very hierarchical. as many of you have come to realize, and so it does go up the chain. But at the end of the day, as a summer analyst, you're working under an analyst, and so the analyst will catch most of your mistakes. You don't want, as a first-year analyst, for your associate to be catching a lot of mistakes, because that's going to play a large role in your feedback and your performance review, and potentially your compensation. And then in a broader sense, when you look at exit opportunities, firms rank you, and you want to be ranked highly, and you want to be well regarded within your group as you look forward.
Awesome. Maybe Todd or Liz or I can speak to, like, can you speak a little bit about the second year experience, how it's different, how life changes?
I can kick it off. So I think the biggest thing is, the first year there's definitely a learning curve. It's different. It differs in length for different people, but call it 3 to 6 months. You're really learning. You're learning new transactions, different structures. You're learning how to model, and all that stuff. And then I think the biggest transition between the first year and second year is just really your skill level. When people say, hey, we're looking at merging company A and company B, can you put together a quick merger model and let's put together some analyses and a quick presentation? Something that used to take you days or maybe even a week to do when you were a first year, maybe you can get done in like half the amount of time, which then means you can leave the office earlier, and it just kind of generally makes your lifestyle a little bit better. So that's kind of the biggest thing. And then, I mean, there's other things, like generally a lot of times people will recruit for their next jobs while they're a first year in banking. So generally as a second year, the stress level's down a little bit. You kind of know, a lot of people tend to know where they're going next. So the lifestyle definitely gets, a lot better, which is, I thought a big change.
I would second that. I would say the job also, this is going to sound silly in some ways, but I also think the job gets more fun as you understand what's going on, and fun in general context. But when you have a sense for what the deal means and what the work you're doing and what that means in the bigger picture, it's easier, A, to catch your mistakes and understand what's going on, but B, makes your work, seem a bit more logical, and you can put context around it, which, you have to have some, I don't know if passion's the right word, but you have to enjoy what you're doing in some regards to make it through 2 years, in my opinion, because it's a long trip. And if you have no desire for learning or for what you're working on, then it becomes harder. And I think that part becomes a lot more enjoyable your second year.
Yeah, I would quickly chime in. I would agree with Liz and Todd. I think there's a huge difference between your first and your second year. And you end up getting a lot more responsibility. You get a lot more kind of freedom in terms of your schedule, hopefully a little bit, and it's really a good opportunity for the people who can take on that extra responsibility. And this is true for kind of anything, even the first half of your summer internship versus the next second half. There's always opportunity to kind of take on more with people who show themselves capable and are interested in doing that. So I think the second year is really a good opportunity for you guys to do it. So Ben, you'll have to let us know what it's like in a little bit.
The one other thing I would say there, Brett, is for anyone who is transitioning, it's more enjoyable, but I think your second year review in some ways, if you don't have a job, or even if you want people at the bank to write your recommendations going forward, I think one of the things to keep in mind is that your second year does matter, and you still want to leave on good terms, and so it shouldn't be a kind of thing where you did your first year, you put in a lot of work and effort, and you got a job, and then your second year you don't do anything. I know people have that attitude, but I know from those who have left Barclays that I was kind of a year behind. It does stay with that person and their reputation, so you do want to have, you're working so hard for 2 years, you want to be able to count on those people for recommendations and reviews and keep in touch with the senior people at the bank.
Totally.
More senior.
All right, so the next question, I think one of the nice things about having our little Excel group is you have a group of people that are willing to be honest and transparent about kind of what's going on in the community, that trust each other. So I think it's just helpful to talk about maybe some of the ways where people how you get through kind of the rougher periods. I think it's probably a well-known thing that banking is not always a walk in the park. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I think there's a lot of merits to it, but not every day is kind of the easiest one. So I think it's good to share. If anyone has some thoughts or strategies over what's helped them get through some of the tougher days, and for the people who aren't as aware, I think one of the characteristics of banking compared to a lot of other fields is it's very lumpy or volatile. So like your average hours a week might be X, but there's a huge disparity on both sides. Some weeks it's really great, and some days it's terrible. I think it's important to kind of have good strategies to kind of handle stuff. So anyone even Will as an intern or Richie, then any good thoughts on kind of what helped you guys through some of the rougher patches?
So I can speak to that. I'm actually going through a pretty busy time in my group, and so currently I've been in I think 7 weeks straight without a day off, and a lot of that are it's a lot of 3-4 a.m. nights, some all-nighters. I think what's important, having good attitude was mentioned during your internship as something that reflects very well. Having a good attitude helps get through the tough times. Hopefully you've picked a firm and a group at that firm where you like the people that you're working with, where you're friendly with the other analysts, the associates, and the senior guys are nice. And I think if you have a group that has a good culture, regardless of how many hours or days that you're working consecutively, as long as you have a smile on, people are going to be understanding, people are going to be nice. If you need to come in later or slip out earlier when you can, I think it's huge.
Totally agree with that. And just add a different sort of take on it. I think personal wellness is extremely important in so many different ways. It's critical that you take some time to run to the gym at least a couple times a week. If you're tired and you need to say I need to take a couple hours nap after a full night, that's okay. Make sure you can find a group that will respect you and will ensure that you come and show up healthy every day. Keep your desk clean. Make sure you're socializing in the office too. That's also important. I find after a long project, it's sort of important. It's sort of really key for me to go run around the office and just socialize with the different analysts, different associates. Even walk into my MD's office and just talk to him, just to make sure that there's a human side to the job too, and you're not staring at a screen all day. So that's what I do to stay sort of in shape.
From the intern front. Like Brett talked about, like the job is lumpy even in a 10-week time frame. But that being said, one could be fearful for the entire 10 weeks that they can step out of line, and while it is easy to do so, like everyone says it's an attitude thing. So if you keep a smile on your face and like little things like Richie said, like keeping your desk clean and like making rounds around the floor and trying to connect with people so that like you have allies all over the place, like it humanizes the job and everything is just a lot more enjoyable, as and we'll use enjoyable with and we'll take that with a grain of salt. But on top of that, we're all social people, and to some extent, and you wanna like make those relationships around the floor, and like getting lunch and getting dinner, and like sometimes it's hard to do so, and sometimes you can feel like you're kind of forcing it, but if you kind of get on it early, like it's important to understand that you have some say, and people do respect like your position and understand the like stress that you're undergoing even as an intern, and it's not like you're so it's not like you're insignificant. It's not like nobody realizes you're around. Like you're making everyone else's lives easier, and they appreciate that, and so they'll meet you halfway. Yeah.
Those are great points. I would say I'm gonna again be repetitive here because it's worth it. Number one, like find time to go to the gym. I think it's a great point. You'd be surprised at the wonders that it can work, even if it's for 30 minutes. And people are fine with like you make the time, you can figure it out. It'll definitely be a big benefit to you. And number two, just perspective is important. This is not like a revolutionary thought, but just keeping in mind that like it is a lumpy experience, that things pass, that you're gonna have bad days, and during those bad days, like you're gonna have better times ahead, and during the better times, like take advantage of them because it doesn't last forever, just like everything else in life. I just think perspective is a big important one there.
The one other thing that I would add that I don't think anyone's touched on is just kind of having perspective on the work that you're doing. So I think I've seen a lot of times with analysts, people kind of get in vicious cycles where they're exhausted and then more work is put on them and they don't take a step back to think about what needs to be done. And so inevitably in doing the work, they spend 30 minutes going down the wrong path, or they do a sloppy job, or they're spending too much time on something that's not nearly as important as the other part. And so what I would say is just even through those hard times, like take 5 minutes before you start working on whatever you need to work on and think about it and try and prioritize. And I think that does help in the long run.
And I would add one more point too. I think when you start your job, even an intern, this maybe is helpful for some of the people on the line here. Like everyone wants to be very subservient. They want to be a yes man and do everything that they can, whatever people ask them. And to a large extent, like that's really important. You kind of have to do that. But I think you'll also realize as you spend a little bit more time on the job, like a lot of people will respect your opinion and they respect someone who can not argue with them per se, but like, you know, say what they feel or say, hey, you know what, like I actually can't do this thing right this second, or I need to do this a little bit later, or I think maybe we should do this a different way that doesn't involve like times as much time. It's definitely a careful balance, and it's only one that you really can know once you get comfortable with the relationships that you have at the places you're working. But I can tell you for sure that a lot of people come to appreciate that. They like to have someone underneath them who's willing to kind of think a little bit and not push back, but use their brain and think about like the best way to do things. Okay, so we have a couple minutes left. I think we'll try to wrap up a little after 9:30. But I guess maybe if we're going through the whole life cycle here, I guess maybe we'll touch kind of the exit component of it, because I know that everyone kind of decides at different points what they want to do. Some people want to stay within banking. That's great. Some people decide they want to leave. So I know there's a lot of different ways to go here, but maybe just Todd and Liz, like talk very briefly about kind of what the timeline is and what are the most important things that like you need to be thinking about as you think about what you might want to do towards the end of your program.
Todd, maybe you should go first here because I think you went through the traditional recruiting process. I kind of took a little bit of a different route, so maybe you give the lay of the land there. I can chime in about how I went about my recruiting.
Sure. So the process is generally the way it works is the first step is you need to meet with headhunters, and that's kind of like your first screen. And so there's a bunch of different firms that do all like the headhunting. There's like I'd probably say there's 5 to 7 big ones, but there's a ton. And a lot of the private equity firms, the hedge funds, some like the corporate kind of biz dev jobs will use these headhunters. In terms of timing, they generally will start reaching out to first-year analysts. I would say maybe even as early as November, but December and January. And so what will happen there is, it'll be on. So the analysts and the headhunters will schedule a coffee chat or maybe a phone conversation. It'll be 30 minutes. It's usually pretty informal. In my experience, they don't ask very many technical questions, but they'll just kind of ask you, what you're interested in, any like geographic preferences, any vertical or industry preferences. They're really just trying to get a sense of what you're interested in so they could best match you with their clients, who are going to be, like the hedge funds and private equity firms of the world. And so then that process will basically generally I always recommend people reach out and meet with headhunters in January. Some people will do it earlier, or some people will do it later. But what I found is the interviews for the private equity firms and hedge funds kind of varies when they kick off. it's kind of like they all want to wait as long as possible, but once one jumps, they all jump. So I remember like the year before me, the private equity firms and hedge funds started interviewing in I think end of March, beginning of April. My year was more early February, early to mid February. So it was a little bit unexpected in terms of the timing. But basically, once that kicks off, it's a bit chaotic, to be honest. You'll have all the big private equity firms and hedge funds just trying to interview everyone at the same time. It's kind of like it's madness over a weekend that kind of extends into the next week, and then we'll keep going from there depending on if you end up landing a job or not. And then, I mean, I guess that's kind of the timeline. I'll stop there. Liz, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, so I'll just add a little bit of a different perspective. That's definitely true, and I think that for people who are really interested in private equity or hedge funds and know that that's what they want to do following banking for 2 years, it's a good opportunity with a lot of firms interviewing and a good opportunity to get in early. What I would say, though, is that you don't need to follow the path, and you should have a good sense of what you want to do, and I say that for 2 reasons. One, I don't think it's worth the stress of going through the process if you're not sure that you want to do that. And then 2, I think a lot of firms can really see right through you and tell the individuals that are interviewing because they actually want to do the job, and the others that are interviewing because they feel like they should because their colleagues are. And what I would say is that there are plenty of opportunities that come up post the recruiting season that even for some, so the firm I work for now recruits during recruiting season. They need an additional hire, and I recruited and got a job with them off cycle. So even the firms that typically recruit during recruiting season, well, you'll often see 1 or 2 times during the year they might recruit off cycle. And so what I would say is it's more important to kind of have an understanding of what you want and go from there as opposed to going through recruiting just because others are if you're not sure that's what you want.
Awesome. I think that's really good advice, and I would echo that too. The process. I mean, this is true to interns and college too. Like coming out of college, a lot of these processes and decisions that come up about what to do, where to work, where to interview, tend to come up very quickly. And there's really nothing you can do about it other than sit on the sidelines, and that's probably not, that's not a viable alternative. And the result is you have to make very quick decisions that have sometimes pretty long-term consequences. And the best thing you can do is just try to think about them ahead of time before those 1 hour, 2 hour, 3-day decisions come up, and just kind of be mindful about kind of what you're interested in doing. So with that, I'm going to pause. I don't know if it doesn't look like there's any questions posted. I'm going to pause for a second. If anyone has any questions, I think there's a way to post them. We'll look for a second. But if not, I will see if anyone on our crew here has any closing things they want to say. Anyone?
I would just say, Brad, I appreciate what you just said, which is kind of asking questions ahead of time as opposed to sitting on the sideline during recruiting, whether it's for banking or private equity or anything else. So I'll put this out there. I don't know how others feel, but I'm available to answer any questions for those currently in banking, for those thinking about banking, and just want to get a perspective on whether it's private equity or other jobs in the industry. I can't speak to as much, but I would say talk to as many people as you can because that will help inform your decision.
I would echo that too, and I think it goes probably without saying that all of us here are reachable, and even with everyone's busy hours and stuff, are happy to help. So I think everyone can kind of find a way to get in touch with someone on Facebook or whatever. But if you need anyone's contact info, you can reach out to me at least, and we'll connect you to the right person. So I would just say in closing, big thanks to Mikey who put this together, set it up. All the heavy lifting behind the scenes. This stuff is going to be recorded and posted for people who want to watch afterwards. I know there's a lot of people who are interested in this stuff. And thank you all, my fellow peers here, Ben, Liz, Mikey, Natalie. Thanks for joining. Richie, Todd, Will. It's great to see you all. It's great to get all your advice and opinions, and and it was great. So I'll stop there. If anyone wants to add anything else, that's it. But otherwise, I think that's it, Mikey.